The USC Trojans were one of college football's most disappointing teams in 2023. After a 7-5 record, questions about the defensive ability of this USC team have rightfully so lingered around this program all winter and spring long, and now that they're entering the Big Ten Conference, even more questions are surfacing. But Lincoln Riley has a new defensive coordinator and has gone back to the fundamentals. So can USC be a player in the college football playoff conversation in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to prediction season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. And thank you so much for watching this video. Help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you want to do more, obviously watch my other videos, but you can also like, comment, share, and anything else you do to interact with the channel. Help support what I do here on YouTube, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of you for doing what you do. So now let's talk about USC football in 2024. How do we do that? Well, just like my other prediction videos, we're going to go through the team's offense, go through the team's defense, and then we will go ahead and preview and predict every single game on USC's 2024 schedule. Before we do that, though, got to talk about a couple things that you see here on screen. Right here is a list of stats that the team, either offensively or defensively, put up last season. And of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the coaching staff. So without further ado, let's waste no more time and let's dive on into talking about this offense from last season. And despite obviously the concerns on defense, and we will talk about that in great detail when we move on to the defensive side of the ball, this offense was very, very talented and very good last season, and it does lose a lot of its most talented players, including the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft and your 2022 Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams. Last season, 3,633 yards, 30 touchdowns, 5 picks on 78% completion percentage. You also do lose a very talented player, Malachi Nelson, who left through the transfer portal, and he is now going to be playing on blue turf in Boise, Idaho. So yes, of course, Caleb Williams is a big loss, but Malachi Nelson, a guy who very well could have challenged for the starting job this year, is also gone through the portal. He likely will be that starting quarterback over at Boise State, who's going to be one of the best teams in the group of 5 around this year. However, Miller Moss does come back, and if his stat line sort of progresses to anything like I'm reading right here, you're in for a treat, all of you Trojan fans, because I think Miller Moss is going to be a good quarterback if this stat line stands. 681 yards and 65 pass attempts. That is 10.5 yards per completion. 7 touchdowns, 1 interception on 70% completion percentage. Stretch that out over a full year, you're probably looking at least 30 touchdowns, maybe 3,500 yards. Miller Moss, if that continues there, is going to maybe not pick up right where Caleb Williams left off. There's just a dynamic ability with Caleb Williams that is really, really hard to fill in for, but Miller Moss, with as talented as this offensive group is still going to be a really good quarterback for this team. If not Miller Moss that gets the starting job, Jade Maeva is a UNLV transfer that has a lot of experience and could push for that job as well. I'm giving it to Miller Moss. That's who I expect to be the Trojan starting quarterback, and Jake Jensen's in the quarterback room as well. Couple things we need to talk about, though, with the skill position room. Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones, your 2 leading rushers last year, are both gone. Third leading rusher was Caleb Williams. He had 11 rushing touchdowns, but 16 rushing touchdowns combined between those two. A couple of depth pieces in Darwin Barlow and Rayleigh Brown are gone through the transfer portal. So that left the running back room a little bit thin. Quentin Joyner, a very talented player, does come back as well as Amarian Peterson, but Woody Marks is a Mississippi State transfer that has a lot of experience playing in Starkville. If Quentin Joyner is to not be that #1 back, it will be Woody Marks, and if Joyner is that #1 back, Woody Marks will make a very, very solid #2 back, so that gives a little boost to this running back room. Your wide receiver room does lose a hell of a lot of talent. Brendan Rice, of course, was the son of the NFL Hall of Famer, 791 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was the second leading receiver. Ahead of him was Taj Washington in 1,062 yards and 8 touchdowns. So you lose Jerry Rice's son as well as Taj Washington, and a ton of guys through the transfer portal as well. Mario Williams and Dorian Singer were top 6 receivers on this team last year, and Michael Jackson III is also going to be gone. He had 146 yards last season and 17 catches. Definitely was a pretty solid player for this group. But wide receiver room, even though it loses a lot of talent, it still has a lot of talent. Deuce Robinson and Zachary Branch, who was a world-class kick and punt returner, as well as is going to be a phenomenal wide receiver this year. He comes back. Kyron Hudson, Jacoby Lane are back, and then you get a freshman coming in Xavier Jordan, as well as a lot of pieces from the transfer portal. Jaden Richardson, I believe, is a Division II level transfer that comes over and provides a lot of experience and should play some big minutes. Jay Fair is over from Auburn, and Kyle Ford is over from UCLA. Jude Wolf does leave the tight end room through the transfer portal, but your leading tight end in Lake McCree does come back. 262 yards and 1 touchdown last season. Carson Tabarachi will also be back as well. And on the offensive line, got a lot of notable losses. Most notably is Jarrett Kingston, who will now be playing on Sundays. Tarkin Lovelace and Milik do leave through the transfer portal, and Justin Dedich is gone due to graduation. So your offensive line will consist of 5 of these 6 guys: Elijah Page, Alani Noah, Emmanuel Pregnon, Gino Quinones, Mason Murphy, and Jonah Monheim. Let's talk about the offense in 2024 really, really quickly. Again, as long as Miller Moss can transition that stat line into a full season and especially play as good as he did in that bowl game against Louisville, he's got a very talented group of wide receivers that, albeit does lose some really talented players, but the talent level is still there in the wide receiver room. Who knows if this running back room is going to end up taking a jump or not. I expect this offensive production to dip a little bit. In my opinion, that's just what happens when you lose a player as talented as Caleb Williams, but the talent level is still there for this to be a really, really good offense in 2024. The defense, though, has always been the concern with a Lincoln Riley team. It continues to be the concern here in 2024. And Lincoln Riley made it a point to focus on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the upcoming fall camp, to prepare for the Big Ten life next season. 34.4 points per game, yeesh. Over 400 yards per game, yeesh. This team struggled to defend the pass, struggled to defend the run. They weren't good on third down. It just lacked the defensive coaching. Enter DeAnton Lynn. I apologize for the sudden pause. Had to add the special teams coordinator, Ryan Doherty, in there as well. But DeAnton Lynn comes over from UCLA to provide, hopefully, that lift in the defensive side that Alex Grinch could not provide to this defense. It does lose a lot of talent, however, off of this defensive side. Gone to the NFL is Solomon Byrd, one of the better defensive linemen for this team last season. Off the edge, 48 tackles and 6 sacks. Romello Height, Corey Foreman, Dejon Benson, and Isaiah Rikus are going to be gone through the transfer portal. Kion Bars is gone through graduation as well. Jameel Muhammad, Bear Alexander, Braylon Shelby, Elijah Hughes, and Anthony Lucas all do return to this team, as well as you get a guy through the transfer portal in Nate Clifton. I believe he comes over from Wyoming. I do want to check that really quickly, though. No, he comes over from Vanderbilt. The Wyoming transfer I'm thinking of is Gavin Meyer. He is not on screen, but definitely could end up playing some snaps on the defensive line. One quick thing about Isaiah Rikes, he originally was a Texas A&M transfer that came in here, and they did lose him through the portal, so technically not a player leaving that had production last year, but it was a guy they had through the transfer portal and then lost, if that makes sense. Linebacker room does lose Shane Lee. A very talented linebacker has gone to the NFL, 28 tackles, a sack for him last year. Tackett Curtis, who was one of the best linebackers in the portal, obviously left through that transfer portal. So your linebacker room honestly does return a lot of talent. Eric Gentry is coming back, 45 tackles and a sack for him last season. You also are losing Rajon Davis, my apologies. You are returning Rajon Davis, and Mason Cobb does come back as well. Cobb was the leading tackler for the team last year, 85 tackles for him. You also are getting Easton Mascarenas Arnold, who is going to be coming over from his former team in, checking real quickly, the Oregon State Beavers. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure I got that right. Your defensive back room loses a lot of talent as well. Christian Roland Wallace is going to be gone to the NFL, out of that cornerback room. 37 tackles, 9 pass defended, 2 interceptions last season, while you do lose Domani Jackson, Syer Wright, and Traquan Fegans through the transfer portal. Kalen Bullock and Max Williams Bullock, of which was a top 5 tackler for this team last season. He had 61 tackles, 7 passes defended, and 2 picks. Williams, 27 tackles, 2 passes defended. Both of those guys are going to be playing on Sundays. So your defensive back room looks like this. Jacoby Covington and Prophet Brown will be coming back in the cornerback room, but that left this room a little bit thin, especially with all the transfers leaving. So you get a lot of transfers coming in to this program. John Humphrey is coming into this program. He is coming over by way of UCLA. You have Greedy Vance coming over to this team as well from Florida State, and DeCarlos Nicholson is over from Mississippi State. And in your safety room, Jalen Smith, Bryson Shaw, and Zion Branch will be coming back here to this room. Smith, the second leading tackler for the team last year. Shaw was the fourth leading tackler for the team last season. And some transfers come over by way of the safety room as well. Akili Arnold is over from Oregon State, and Kamari Ramsey is over from UCLA. And kickers are people too. Let's show them some love. Eddie, I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name, but your punter does come back. A couple guys will be battling it out for the primary kicking duty as well. Dennis Lynch and Tyler Robles will be coming back. I apologize for not even trying to pronounce that last name, but regardless, your punter does come back. Okay, let's talk about the defense here. Is the talent level there? I think you could argue that it is, and I am going to make that point. I think the talent level on the defensive end is here. I think there are a lot of good guys, especially in that defensive front. Your linebacker room returns a lot of very, very good talent. Gentry, Davis, and Cobb, I think, are going to be a really good linebacker room for this team. You got a lot of talent from the transfer portal in that defensive back room. I think the coaching and the scheming was what was missing, and Alex Grinch does not have a good track record of being a good defensive coordinator by any stretch of a mile at all. I think the defensive talent is here. I'm very excited to see what DeAnton Lynn is going to bring to this defense. Is it going to be a top 25 defense in the country? Probably not. Is it going to be improved from the past couple of seasons? I definitely expect it to be that way. Again, it's another thing where you just got to kind of prove it, right? Prove it, show me that the defense improves, and then a lot of people around the nation will start to believe it as well. I already think it's going to get at least a little bit better. But again, when you take a look at USC's football schedule here, there are a lot of tough games here where if the defense is not better, USC could be in for a very, very rough season. Before we predict the games, any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Trojans are going to win easily. Any game in yellow is a game to where, hey, there are going to be some really tricky, that's going to be a really tricky game here. USC still going to win, but it's going to be close, or the other team gives them a scare. And then red is a loss. Spoiler alert, there is a lot of yellow on this schedule, but the schedule does start out with a red game. I do see USC losing that game to LSU in week 1. That's the neutral site game in Las Vegas. I think LSU is going to be a very talented team this year. And much like USC, LSU has a lot of defensive questions entering this year, not necessarily on talent. And if we were to compare the two defenses, I think LSU's defense is a lot more talented than USC's. But for both of these teams, new defensive coordinators, and the defense is expected to take a step in the right direction. I trust the talent level on LSU's defense a little bit more, and I like their quarterback a little bit more. Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier, I think, are very comparable players. They've been with their programs for a while. They've waited for their shot, and now they're going to get it. I like Garrett Nussmeier. I like that wide receiver room. I like what LSU has offensively and defensively with Blake Baker coming over as defensive coordinator. I just happen to trust the Tigers a little bit more here in this situation, and I got LSU pulling out of that game in week 1. But USC should get right back to 500 easily. They should be able to beat the Utah State Aggies for their first win of the college football season. Then you get your first bye week, and what better time to do it before your first Big Ten road game? And honestly, the schedule makers kind of did them in here. Your first Big Ten game has to be on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the entire country, the biggest stadium in the country, against the reigning national champion as well. I don't see USC coming away with a win here in this one. Michigan's defense is just way too physical, and I don't think USC's defense is going to have what it takes to slow down Donovan Edwards as much as it needs to come away with the win, especially in a tough, hard-nosed road environment. USC winds up losing that game to the Michigan Wolverines, and then you got to come back home and play a Wisconsin team that I think is going to be very, very tough to play. Tackett Curtis, again, the former USC linebacker, is now at Wisconsin. He is going to be over there playing for that defense. Luke Fickell's going to have a really good defensive scheme. Yes, Tyler Van Dyke is over there as well, and under the right offensive coordinator system, he is definitely going to hopefully explode. At least that's what all the Badger fans are hoping there as well. He's going to provide a lift to this Wisconsin offense. I just think that USC's offense will be able to pull it out here at home. I think Wisconsin's going to be a really good team in 2024, but I see USC, Miller Moss, and this offensive system being a little bit more talented than what Wisconsin has, and they will be able to outscore the Badgers. They will be able to get through this defense, and I think USC's defense starts to take a little bit of a step up during this point in the season. I think USC is going to be able to beat Wisconsin. Then they'll go on the road and beat Minnesota as well. One of the more interesting teams to try to figure out in the Big Ten Conference. I believe USC will go on the road there, though, and beat the Minnesota Golden Gophers. However, I do think they turn around the next week and lose to Penn State at home. Penn State's just a really talented team, and much like what I talked about with the Michigan Wolverines, they're a really, really talented defensive group. I think Penn State's going to be able to handle USC on the defensive side of the ball, and while USC's offense is going to make it really, really tricky here, this USC defense is going to go up against a really good 1-2 punch in running back. The wide receiver room, I think, is going to be overlooked, and Drew Aller's a very good quarterback. Penn State wins that game, and LSU, through the first half of the season, goes 500, but then they get on a little bit of a roll here. You got Maryland and Rutgers coming up next. I think you win both of these games. Maryland also has a lot of defensive issues, and they are losing a lot of their talent offensively. USC is just a more talented offensive team. They'll be able to win that game, and I think they beat Rutgers as well. But do not count the Scarlet Knights out this year. That is a team that I'm figuring could be a team to watch here, and one of the surprises of the season in 2024. Rutgers has got a lot of very good talent offensively. They definitely have good talent defensively. They're going to bring everything it takes to slow down USC, but I still think the Trojans are able to pick up that win. They moved to 5-3 on the season before I think they dropped to 5-4. USC is going to lose one of these games in the back half of the schedule, and I have it being this road game here to the Washington Huskies. Now, I know Washington lost a ton of talent from last season. Of course, Michael Penix is gone. That wide receiver room is decimated. Dylan Johnson at running back is gone. A lot, and I mean a lot, of defensive talent left through the transfer portal. Washington just feels a little decimated, but they have a lot of talent still on that team. I believe Washington is going to be able to pull off a little bit of a surprise here, and I think the USC defense is going to cost them a couple of games this year. I see this being one of them in a tough environment to play in Washington. USC drops this game. They move to 5-4, but I think they win out from here, not without their difficulties, because all these games are going to be highlighted in yellow. Nebraska and Dylan Raiola are going to be a very, very talented bunch this season, and they have one of the best defensive staffs in the country. They have a really, really good defensive roster as well. I just think USC's offense is going to be able to outduel what Nebraska has, especially with Nebraska going on the road. This is a long road trip for the Cornhuskers. I see USC being able to win that game. I also see them being able to beat UCLA, not without their difficulties in beating their rival. Of course, USC has former defensive coordinator at UCLA, DeAnton Lynn, coming over to coach the same job there with their rival in the Trojans. Dante Moore has gone through the transfer portal. A lot of other talent has gone through the transfer portal. The coaching situation is messy, especially with Chip Kelly leaving. I just don't like UCLA's odds in the Big Ten Conference this year. And then I do think USC wins at least one of these big four games, and that's LSU, Michigan State, Penn State, and Notre Dame. Obviously, I have them losing the first three, which means I have them beating the Notre Dame Fighting Irish here. I think by this point in the season, the defense is starting to figure some things out. Notre Dame does have a very talented offensive slate, but the wide receiver room is young. I think with all these experienced transfers, USC can take advantage of that. Miller Moss and the offense will still be good. So I got USC moving to an 8-4 record in 2024, which I feel like is definitely on the little bit of a higher end. I think I'm higher on USC than most, but I am counting on the defense to at least take a step in the right direction. It's not going to be perfect. It might not be a top 25 team, but the defense will take a step in the right direction, and this team has a lot of offensive talent. 7-5 was the other most likely one. I went with 8-4. Let me know what you think about the Trojans in the comment section below. And Oklahoma, you're going to be my next prediction video. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.